Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about the 3 stages of a dark night of the soul and how to know if you're in one. So this is my own experience, and I've put it into 3 different stages that I can see now looking back at my own dark night of the soul. And I'm going to start with what is a dark night of the soul. And so here is the description of it. A profound spiritual or personal crisis characterised by a total collapse of perceived meaning, purpose and connection to the divine, often triggered by intense loss, trauma or existential despair. It feels like a dark place of emptiness, hopelessness and broken egoic identity. Now, the word crisis very much, I would say, sums up how I felt my experience was, and it's very much characterised by this deep sense of hopelessness that you're not going to be able to come out of it as well and come out the other end and rebuild your life. So the first one for me, I'm going to call the collapse of the old life. So for me, the catalyst for this, which was really all the start of it, was going through a separation. So separating from my long-term partner. So at the time I thought that was, I say all I had to deal with. It's not all. It's obviously a very big thing, especially when you've been together a long time, you've got a life together, a house together, etc., etc. But I thought that's what I would have to deal with, and once I'd got past that, I'd be fine and I'd just carry on with my normal life. But little did I know that my whole life was going to collapse, and that was just the very start. It felt like it was the first domino that went down, and I didn't know there was going to be a complete collapse of dominoes after it. So go and listen to my Dark Night of the Soul story. I go into more detail there, but it very much felt like it was one thing after another. It was one big life event crashing after the other, and just when I thought I couldn't have any more on my plate, something else would go, and then something else would go, and I felt it was very much, it felt like a test, like a real test of faith. You know, we're going to strip you back of everything, and how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to deal with all you've attached your identity to over the last 30, 40 years? What if we take that away from you, and who are you now? What's left? It felt cruel, it felt traumatic, it felt brutal. It felt like, it felt like I'd been abandoned by God. It felt like all the work that I'd been doing leading up to this. Now, I thought I'd been doing some work, some personal development work. It felt like I'd done all of that, and yet really, you're really going to take all this away from me? I felt angry. I just felt a mix of emotions, grief as well, grief from what I'd lost. And it felt like a crisis. It felt like everything physical in my life. So from where I lived to my partnerships, my job, it felt like all of that was being pulled out of my life rather violently out of my life. And it all felt like it was happening at the same time as well. And I just felt, it felt like time slowed down as well. I know it sounds really odd. It was like time slowed down, and I was just watching my life completely fall apart, and it was all out of my control. There was nothing I could do. It was happening anyway. I was seeing it not only in the relationship with my partner, but also friendships as well. Everything physically I'd attached my identity to, so I was someone's partner, that went. I was in this friendship group, that went. I had a dog, I owned a dog, that went. I lived in this area, in this house, that went. Even my health, so before this happened, I would say I was in really good health. Physically, mentally, I was really looking after myself, and now that was also taken from me, it felt. So I hope you're getting the sense of how brutal this really felt to me. So yeah, my old life physically fell around me, and I felt very lost. It felt like I had absolutely zero control in my life, which sent me into huge anxiety as well. And I started to feel this lack of hope as well coming in. It's like, how am I going to get out of this? What's next? Gosh, is there anything else? Oh yes, there is something else. And then something else had come out. So that's really how I felt. And it was the collapse, real big physical collapse of my old life and my old identity. So number 2, I would describe this as going into a void, because now I've been stripped back. I felt completely lost. I didn't know who I was. My nervous system went into overload because none of my life didn't feel familiar to me. It felt unsafe. I felt vulnerable. Now, I don't know if this is just a woman being on their own for the first time, and any women out there who have gone through a separation, you might understand what I'm saying by that. It was a feel like I was abandoned, alone, not protected. I realised I was really attached to my partner as well, of kind of as this masculine protective energy. And when that was taken from me, I felt alone, lost, and this feeling of not being safe. So you can imagine my nervous system went into overdrive. I wasn't sleeping. I was full of anxiety as well during this period. And it felt like I didn't recognise my old life as well, because so much had been taken from me and I didn't know who I was. I couldn't almost relate to anything. It's a really, really weird feeling that's very hard to articulate, but it felt dark, empty. I felt alone. It sounds like a cliche, but I really, really didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was without the partnership. I didn't know who I was as this person with doing this job or having their own business. I didn't know who I was without my health. I didn't know who I was without the identity of being a dog owner, a dog lover. And it started me questioning everything as well. So everything I thought I knew was turned on its head. It was turned upside down. So this was me starting to question things about life, about why we do things. I felt like I'd been hit by test after test after test, and now I was sort of going deeper into looking at what the lessons were in this, looking at my relationships with people, what part did I have to play in that, learning lessons about materialism as well, because I lost so much physically and practically in my life. I learnt massive lessons through that as well, and I felt very stuck in this void. I still felt like there was a sense of time had slowed down. I felt like I was in hermit mode. I'd retreated. I wasn't in a state to really socialise at that time. And I was just questioning everything. And this really was the start of me feeling like I still felt like I'd been abandoned, but I wanted to go and do some deeper searching, some deeper seeking, to find some deeper meaning. Everything superficial in my life had gone, and I needed something to cling to, I suppose. So I went off, read everything I could get my hands on. I started meditating because my priorities have all now been changed, and what I want is peace in my life. I want my health back. So the things that we might have wanted in our life before all became meaningless, because health was number one, my mental health was number one, and finding some peace as well was number one. So meditation became bigger in my life. So it's something that I'd struggled to do, but I really started to make it into be more consistent with it. Now, that wasn't to say that I knew what I was doing and I got it straight away, but I started exploring different spiritual practices because I suppose I was desperate at this time. And you start asking, when you've got no identity and you don't know who you are, you start asking those questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of all of this? So while I was still in sort of a crisis, I was starting to shift my thinking and starting to be curious and questioning a little bit more. So that was that phase, that kind of void, darkness, isolation, asking questions, going in internally and seeking answers internally as well. So I think some people call this shadow work. So really doing, like, bringing up all the muck, because it was coming up anyway, whether I liked it or not. So I was really starting to look at that. And just to make it clear, my life was not improving at this point. I was still very much stuck in the crisis period. But I was starting to question a little bit more. So that was my second phase. So the third phase was internal changes, so more internal changes. And I purposely left out the bit where you start to climb out of the dark night of the soul, because I think that's more part of the rebuilding, where you start to see things physically changing in your life. And the dark night of the soul for me was very much about the internal changes. So it was the collapse of the old and then seeing the internal changes. So this is real deep changes in your belief, in your priorities, how you live your life, the starting of a deeper connection as well to the divine, God, higher self, whatever you want to call it. Didn't recognise my old life at all. I couldn't relate to it. I couldn't relate to a lot of the people in my life. I started distancing myself from certain friendships as well. I mean, to be honest, most of them had gone at this point, but I started distancing myself from certain people. There was kind of an energetic change that I could feel that was going on as well. And all the things that I thought I wanted from my old life, so the things that we're brought up thinking that we need, or what our life should look like, I started to realise what I wanted was now very different, and it didn't fit in neatly into that box of everybody else's aspirations for their life, or what we're told we should do with our life. And things like being out in nature was more important to me, meditating, having wanting that deeper connection with the divine. And that was it was the start of it being woken up, really starting to be woken up. And it also was the start for me of starting to get through communication, to start having more mystical experiences, something that I'd never really had before, something that I was actually quite scared of. Sort of the things like my dreams were becoming more vivid. I was starting to get messages through in meditation. This started very slowly, and just having a knowing about things. And then it sort of grew into things that just spontaneously would happen. So I've mentioned this before, like seeing auras, seeing colours around the birds, seeing colours around the trees. And I knew something was happening. And it started getting to the point where I'd start having dreams that I'd have to start writing down. Then some of the things in my dreams would then come true. And this just got more and more as the years went on. But in that particular time in the Dark Night of the Soul, it was sort of the very start of it. And I didn't feel like I had any control over it. It was just happening. And I think it was the changes energetically in my body, in my energy, and also through meditation. I was tapping into something in meditation. Now, to me, that's the biggest gift, because I really do feel if I hadn't gone through this Dark Night of the Soul, I wouldn't have done the daily practice of meditation, because it is really hard to make it into a habit. I wouldn't have had the discipline to keep doing it as well. And I just don't know. I just don't think I would have. I may have done it at a surface level, but I wouldn't have wanted to go real deep into meditation. So I think the Dark Night of the Soul was some kind of spiritual catalyst for me to deepen my connection. And this was all out the blue. This wasn't something that I was expecting. The reasons I went into meditation initially was to find some peace. That was all. Little did I know that a byproduct of that was going to be all my senses starting to come online, my intuition starting to come onto line, and my connection to the divine starting to come online. So for me, that's really what, or how I knew I was going through the Dark Night of the Soul. Now I've looked back, because the change has been so massive. A complete U-turn in the person that I used to be. And it's not just physically, it's also in all my beliefs, in how I want to live my life, as well, the way I look at life. Another way you can tell as well is, I think a lot of people, their sensory perceptions change and intuition gets heightened. So it's the changes in yourself. And also a lot of people can start to have more psychic abilities and things like that. That sort of goes hand in hand with it. Well, it certainly did for me. Anyway, it completely changed my life. So those are the 3 stages. I hope that resonates with somebody. You can find bits in there that you think, oh yeah, I really resonate with that, and that's sounds similar to me. And another thing I just want to say is, it's not linear, so you can kind of jump between these 3 stages as well. So sometimes I would feel like I was going backwards. So I might feel like I was just starting to, say, go through the change, the 3rd stage, and then I might go back into the void, or feel like I'm back into the crisis mode. So you can jump around. It's very much not linear, and healing generally isn't linear. And the other question I think a lot of people ask, and it was something that I really was asking a lot and trying to find out, was about timelines. How long are we stuck? Because it feels like you're stuck in the Dark Night of the Soul. So that's a really hard one, because it depends from individual to individual. But mine was a very long one, and I felt stuck in the crisis part for a long time, until I realised that I wasn't going back to my old life, that there was no going back to that. And I think once I'd finally got that message, I started to move on a little bit. But I was in there 2-3 years easily, in that real deep dark place, and then you sort of have the different stages of slowly coming out of the Dark Night of the Soul, and then you get to the rebuilding part, which I've done a video on these different stages of spiritual awakening as well, if you wanted to go and check that out. But they are my own 3 stages. I'd love to hear if you've had a different experience, or if you think there's any other stages to it, because it is a little bit different for everybody. And I just hope this helps somebody out there, helps you feel maybe not so alone in what you're going through, and just nice to see somebody that's come out of that Dark Night of the Soul. So it gives you hope you can do exactly the same. So I'm going to wrap up for today, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Thanks. Bye.